Welcome to my space, Yasmine Claire. I'm so glad that finally we are connecting and talking. And you know that I've been trying to talk to you for a while, and you're just so busy all the time, and you have so many things going on in your life. You are a very, very dedicated animal lover. You rescue them compulsively and nurture them, stand up for them anywhere they are in distress. And of course, you are a passionate environmentalist as well. And you're deeply aware of social and political realities. And anywhere you see any injustice being done, whether it's to an animal, to another human being, you'll stand up and you'll speak about it, you'll counter it if possible. And that kind of courage is very, very rare in our society. I really, really admire you for that. And of course, you have so many other facets to your personality. You're a poet, you're a painter, and an educationist, a very, very dedicated one, again. I just wanted to start this conversation by asking you just how many animals are living with you right now in your home? Because I know you don't run a shelter. It's your home is a shelter where, animals of all kinds live. So just tell me how many animals are there right now.
At home, we have about 18 rescue dogs. I think we acquired a lot of dogs over the COVID lockdown. People were leaving their dogs in the streets, or two dogs came because they were just left outside our gate and the person went away. So 18 at home. And we have about 15 cats. We also managed to get a few cats during the COVID lockdown. That was a big reason why the population at home increased. But yes, that's a number we look after at home.
A lot of people, may have asked you this. Why exactly do you do this? Because I know it's not easy. I know how challenging it is because I've been seeing you and your husband, Jayaprakash Satyamurthy, doing
Yeah.
this work tirelessly and without any help and acknowledgement from the people who dump their animals in front of your doorstep. What is it that keeps you going? I mean, and of course, you face so much heartbreak, when animals fall sick or they come to you when they're beyond the, um, any kind of help that you can possibly give them. What is it that keeps you going? And you've been doing it for how long? I have no idea. Just tell me, for how long have you been doing this?
Well, actively, right since I was in college, with my husband now, it will be 17 years.
Wow.
To it's difficult to say what keeps me going, or what keeps the two of us going, because it can get very draining and very stressful. And that is an aspect people should know about animal welfare, animal rescue, bringing home an animal. A lot of them need rehabilitation before they can get adopted out. A lot of them don't get adopted out. So the mental health aspect of animal welfare and rescue is something that has to be acknowledged, and the stress of it has to be taken into account. But what keeps us going, what keeps me going, is the fact that you bring home an animal, you look after them, and then they find uh, a home. Like, for example, recently a German Shepherd puppy was abandoned in a hospital because he has mange. And we looked after him for about 3 weeks, and then he was adopted by a lovely couple, and he's just blossoming now.
Hmm.
So the happy endings for the animals is what really keeps us going.
Right, right. This is something that I know bothers you a lot. The kind of misconceptions that people have about animal rescuers. You've seen this, and there's so much negativity. There is so much criticism, and somehow there is this preconception in people's minds that uh, we don't share this space that we occupy with any other living being. We it's ours. We own it. We can um, you know it's not something that people are willing to give to another animal who may be trying to befriend them on the street. And there is so much of negativity against street dogs as well, and people who feed them. Tell me some of the challenges that you have faced. I mean, as somebody who takes care of animals, and the kind of reactions that you have faced, while doing so.
Understood. Yeah, so, beginning with the most common thing that you would see on Facebook posts that people make or that I have been told is, oh, there are so many humans suffering in this world. Why are you helping animals? And the answer to that is very simple. It's that each of us has something that we feel strongly about and we feel passionately about. And if the person who's telling me that I should instead focus my attention on people who are hungry or people who are homeless should make a start by doing it themselves. But in most cases, these are people who are just talking and just saying things without them actually doing anything. And my point here is that if we each did things that we felt would make a difference in the world, maybe the world's problems would be much lesser than what they are. Some of the problems that I've faced is that the roads could be littered with all kinds of cigarette ends and those teacups, not, those paper teacups and other things. There could be all kinds of litter on the road. But if you go and feed a dog, then passers by or a person thinks that they really have to share an important piece of advice with you, will say, why are you dirtying the streets? You cannot feed these dogs like this, completely blind to the other garbage around. And this is just, a sense of why is this animal being fed? I don't know whether it's something that they're not used to, something that is not congruent with them. I honestly don't know where such people come from, in terms of where they get this idea. Friends of mine have also faced things like, don't take the dog past, don't walk your dog past my house, it's inauspicious. How do you fight a superstition like that? You have single people who do a lot of animal rescue who are harassed because they are single and not because of anything else. There's, as you had pointed out, there's a lot of prejudice, there's a lot of hate, there's a lot of feeling that, as you said, the space belongs only to us, to humans, and not to any other animal. And I don't know really how to make those people understand that we're all part of the ecosystem. And the law has clearly stated that animals, cats and dogs, are community animals and they share the same rights that we do. And I think the more aware people become of that, the better it will be. We are never going to see a world where you'll have a whole neighborhood rooting for animals and doing their bit. That's not going to happen. But if at least people can live and let live, that would be great.
You've been in Bangalore for how long? For how many years? You were born and brought up here, right?
No, I was born in the north. Then my parents moved when I was maybe 11 or 12, and I've been there ever since.
And how long has that been?
So I finished my 10th grade from a school in Andhra Pradesh in 94. And from 94 onwards, I've been here. So that's over 30 years now.
Right. So in these 30 years, you must have seen the amount of forestation and pollution and all the different things that have happened around Bangalore and within Bangalore. The green lung spaces are disappearing and spaces are becoming more constricted, and of course, a lot of wild animals also, like, I remember monkeys coming into my last apartment. And the amount of brutality that is shown to animals who stray into, these residential colonies, it just boggles my mind, because they don't realize that the spaces that we now occupy were once occupied by animals. And,
Yes.
We have pushed them out and they have no place to go. And the entire ecosystem, as you said, which is supposed to be shared between different species, is now just being vitiated, polluted, and occupied by human beings. How do you see this change and what can be done about it? I know you get very disturbed when you see trees being cut and green lung spaces being taken away. What is the kind of politics behind this? Because I want to understand who benefits from things like this, from denuding a city of its green cover.
Well, for one thing, trees fetch you money, right? And a tree that is felled is sold for its wood. So I think that people need to be very aware of the law and aware of their rights. Trees, especially trees that have got nests, nestlings, fledglings, trees that have got any kind of now what we call urban wildlife living on them, like squirrels and owls and other animals, you cannot fell or even trim that tree. To trim or to fell any tree that does not come under commercial trees, which are eucalyptus, silver oak, and I don't remember off the top of my head, but one or two other trees like that, you have to get permission from the forest department. Now, we recently had a case where a neighbor, and this was unbelievable. So she's on the ground floor, and her apartment is also at the back of the main apartment complex. So there was a tamarind tree growing over there, and she tripped on one of its roots one day, and she got the tree felled. And this was a tamarind tree, illegal to fell. She is a lawyer, her husband is a lawyer. They use their power, they use their influence, as people seem to do, uh, and all our protests and the neighborhood, they all that we tried to do was in vain, because they were influential enough to shut everything down. But what I hope is that they got rattled enough, because they knew that the whole uh, association of this neighborhood was now against them and really angry with them. So maybe they won't repeat this again. But yes, awareness of the law, trying to understand spaces in Bangalore that can be rewilded, that can be uh, made into even a mini tiny green island. Now today, these days, when we go down on the roads, we see palm trees put up everywhere. The BBMP develops traffic islands, but they put palm trees over there, which is just a straight sort of not thought out idea from the US that is being planted over here, or Dubai. I don't know what they want the city to look like. But instead of these palm trees, they can have smaller, if their worry is that the roots will grow deep and will crack up the roads ultimately, they can choose indigenous trees that maybe don't grow so tall, right? Choose a mango tree, or choose a tree that is not going to send out very big roots, and see how you can regreen the city. Because yes, between what the city was in 94 and what the city is today, there is no comparison. This is a Bangalore that is alien almost to people who were there since that time. And people have to fundamentally change their attitudes, right? I mean, anyone who wants a tree planted or protests against a tree being cut or even talks about greenery is seen as some poo-poo hippie environmentalist, and who is probably a little touched in the head. And the other people who are sane and fine in their houses can, look down on us and not bother doing anything. That kind of attitude has to change, because it's not helping anyone. And each one have to be aware and understand that the climate is changing, and it's only going to change for the worse. But awareness, or even if there is awareness, there is not enough care, there is not enough drive, there's not enough will to carry that awareness forward.
Right. Another thing that I think people don't seem to understand is that we are all interconnected. It's not like we are living in a, some kind of an isolated space where, or in a bubble where whatever is happening to the environment is not going to affect us. And if our, ecosystems get imbalanced, it's not going to bother us or our children, because ultimately you're going to leave behind this planet in whatever shape it is to the next generation. And if you're not bothered about that, then I don't know what is it that will bring you to your senses, because already we seem to be hurtling towards this the great unknown as far as the environment is concerned. Like
Yeah.
I asked you, like,
Hmm.
what exactly is the politics behind this? As you said, it means money. Felling trees translates into money.
Money and see development, right? So each time you bring up the argument that we have to do something to save the environment, we cannot have green spaces being converted into multiplex apartments and saying, oh, but development is is so important. And what is a person's understanding of development? Because if development means converting all kinds of spaces that were once green into something concrete, it's going to backfire on you. It's going to backfire on the children and the grandchildren that you're going to have. And that I don't think is in the radar of any one of these people who say, oh, but you see, development is important. You can't stop development. I'm really tired of people
Hmm.
saying that. It's a thoughtless remark. And of course, politics have and political people have jumped upon it and said, yeah, of course, development is needed. So build more tech parks and build more malls and build more glass structures because apparently that is the mark of civilization rather than protecting the environment.
Right. And isn't that a little bit ironical? Because when we talk about Indian culture, when we talk about our great Sanskriti, we seem to forget that India has always been intensely aware of its relationship with the environment. It's
Yeah.
not. Yeah. So we've worshipped nature. We've had such an emotional connect with trees and with rivers and with mountains,
Oh,
and yet today, with this whole resurgence of our Indian so-called identity, we seem to be becoming more and more distant from the very things that make us Indian.
of course. I mean, we
Yeah.
used to have sacred forests, and a sacred forest was a forest that was created around the temple, and it had all kinds of wonderful indigenous trees. You don't find very many sacred forests anymore,
Hmm.
and that's a shame.
Right. Right. Tell me something. What is it that people can do? Because usually the idea of animal activism is connected with such negativity that, like you said, people who do that are a little touched in the head, and they are not practical, and they are not reasonable, and they're irrational, and they get angry very fast and all of that. So these are
Yeah.
all these preconceptions, and also nobody wants to go down that road and be seen as the person who comes out every day
Hmm.
to feed the stray dogs.
Hmm.
What exactly can people do in any capacity to make a difference to the environment, to ecology? What kind of things, what kind of habits can people adopt at a micro level if they don't want to like do the profound things that you and JP are doing?
I don't have so much of faith in adults, but as a teacher, I find that I have a lot of faith in my students over the years that I have taught them. Children are much more aware of the need for equality, for protecting the climate, for uh, gender rights, for all that, and they sincerely mean it. This is not some woke phase that they are going through that they'll get over at some point in their lives. They really know better than us. So I think that if we can manage, if schools can manage to, I don't want schools to have yet another educational program because that's just adding to the load of an already huge
Hmm.
load in schools. But these things can be talked about, these things can be workshop. Maybe I think isn't the word workshop, but you know, creating some kind of a platform where children can talk about this, where they can discuss what they would expect to see in the future, what they can do, and each individual should put in some effort. I'm talking about adults here to try and educate themselves. It has taken me years and years and years living in this apartment complex to make people see that there are solutions that do not harm either the human or the animal, that there are laws that protect animals, that there are solutions that are not harmful. And it has taken them a very long time to come around to at least acknowledging my point of view, if not agreeing and embracing it.
Hmm.
So we just have to have conversations, keep conversations open, challenge people, challenge them politely. A lot of times when people who feed animals and do animal activism completely lose it and, shout, is when they've reached their breaking point. That person who would have shouted at them would probably have been the hundredth, literally the 100th person, and all the resilience that they had would have broken at that point.
Hmm.
But if something is thrown at you, challenge that assumption, have a conversation. Usually, you'll find such people do not like having conversations. And the moment
Hmm.
you start talking sense to them, they back off because their brains can't handle that, and then they leave you alone.
Hmm.
So, that I found as a strategy works quite well.
Right, right. Um, would you feel as an educator, like we were talking about students and the faith you have in the next generation, but as in the context of the country that we are living in, would you feel,
Hmm.
do you feel that there is now, we in a crisis, there's a crisis of empathy, so to speak, in
Right.
the country, where we don't forget animals, we don't have empathy for each other, for a neighbor, for somebody we could have grown up with, there is so much of polarization, there is so much of mistrust, and so much this kind of toxic air of negativity everywhere. How do you protect your students from that? What do you say to them when they counter such things?
So, the thing is that one can't protect them because they've already been exposed to it, they've already
Hmm.
faced the brunt of it.
Hmm.
All one can do is, I really think having constant conversations, having constant back and forth discussions, not from, I'm up here, you're down here perspective, but treat at least my high schoolers, I treat them as adults. So,
Hmm.
for example, in the IB curriculum, there's this mandatory subject called theory of knowledge, which very
Hmm.
simply, is about how do I learn, how do I know what I know, what is critical thinking, etc. And after a year and a half, one student just raised his hand and said, Miss, I come from such an orthodox background, and everyone was supporting the BJP, and my family was always forwarding all these WhatsApps and
Hmm.
all kinds of propaganda. Uh, because media literacy is one of the things that we teach under TOK. And he said, but now I can see why it's so harmful and so dangerous. And I'm so, he said, thank you for this class. And he, of course, acknowledged all his classmates also, because there's a wide distribution of students in my school from
Hmm.
all over the world. And he said, I'm so glad to get other perspectives. And I no longer think the way my parents, were encouraging me to think. So if this happened to one child, it must have happened to a lot more.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, there's no substitution. It sounds very, in the air, and it doesn't sound as if anything really concrete can be done. But keeping a dialogue open, keeping conversations open, acknowledging the hurt that children go through when they have not been protected by their parents, when they have not been given the tools to manage the complexities that they are facing. We didn't face half of the complexities that
Hmm.
they face.
Hmm. Hmm.
uh, Being there and just listening to them. We have a student in school who is trans, and he is transitioning at this point, but there are times when teachers have also misgendered him and called him by his dead name, and he has come very upset, and he has spoken to me and another teacher, but he has processed this himself. He said, you know what, they don't really know at this point, they don't really have an understanding, it's not really their fault. And the fact that he is such an advocate for himself, and the
Hmm.
fact that all his classmates are advocates for him, is telling me that he is going to grow up into a well-adjusted person, you know.
Right, right.
Uh, and I could protect him from being called a she or being called by the birth name, but we certainly could have a conversation around what that meant and how that hurt and how that hurt can also be let go.
Hmm.
And I mean, I wasn't the one who said the teacher said it out of ignorance. He said it. He said this is just out of ignorance. They didn't think this through, and so it's okay. I don't mind. You know, the children don't say I forgive them. They say I don't mind. So
Right, right.
uh,
Uh, there's also another aspect to this because the students who you are teaching probably come from a certain background. I'm not
yes,
saying
that's
that, yeah, I'm not saying that it's not important to educate children at that level or in that social strata, because of course it is. But as you know, the education, quality education is becoming more and more inaccessible for children of a certain
yes,
social strata. Uh,
that's true.
Subsidies are being cut and scholarships are being removed, and uh, a lot of institutions which provided good education to lower middle class kids or poor children, socially disadvantaged children, those are being now privatized or shut down or whatever it is that is happening right now. So in
Yeah.
that situation, when basic education is not accessible to you, forget
Mhm.
critical thinking, forget the tools to be able to deal with
Hmm.
changes around you, what can be done? What do you think we need to do as a society to ensure that the next generation doesn't grow into a desperate and dispassionate or misguided generation?
Yeah, I don't think that we can ensure, and it is something that hits me hard very often. I mean, for example, if I see the people who clean our house, and I see their children, and I know that children of their age in my school are having the best education possible, and even if I wanted to, I would never be able to afford to put them in the school I'm teaching them, right?
Hmm.
So, uh, of course, I mean, this is a bubble that I'm in, and we are working in this bubble, and I can see children who are, very, very socially and environmentally oriented, but such ideas, such beliefs, such attitudes may not even be a priority for someone who's just trying to get through the day and who's
Yeah,
going home. Maybe there's no electricity, or maybe they can't study because they have to do a job to, supplement the income. And I honestly don't know what the solution to that is. And that is
right.
something that worries me, and I just draw a blank. I don't know what to
Yeah.
do.
I've seen also in the last few years, especially because of your name and what it signifies, you've also been attacked on social media
Oh, yeah.
and trolled
Yes.
for multiple reasons or for no reasons at all. What is, how do you process that? How do you deal with it personally?
So in the beginning, I would feel hurt or angry, and I would uh, I would become that internet troll who would troll people out of their trolling,
Hmm.
And of course, I would get very stressed, but I would argue my ears and eyes out and always make sure that I had the last word. For example, because of my name, and on many of these anti anti all kinds of things sites. If people have put comments and I put a comment to counter it, they said, "Oh, but we don't need to hear advice from beef eaters."
Hmm.
Because my name is Yasmin, so the assumption is I eat meat. To which, of course, I very triumphantly tell them I'm vegan, but that's not helpful. Now I realize none of that is helpful.
Hmm.
They don't care if I'm vegan or if I'm a beef eater or whatever. This was just something that was said because the hate is so intense, and I'll always be the other person, you
Hmm.
know,
Hmm.
in such a scenario. So I rarely engage now with the way I used to engage on scroll.in and all these other online site news minute where we could post comments and try and argue sense into such people. I really have disengaged now, and instead just very quietly sort of continued my conversations with people in real life, and made I mean, we've had conversations where I've really made them listen to my perspective, and it's not like I want them to move from one end of the spectrum to the other, but at least they move somewhere towards the middle. They
Hmm.
of course, seeing how the current government has not fulfilled promises, has not done things they wanted done, their own disillusionments have come in, and so they've come as close as acknowledging, yeah, maybe you have a point in what you were saying. But the religious phobia that people have, see, the government didn't create it, obviously. The
Hmm.
government played with it. But in families, in neighborhoods, the religious phobia that is there and that has been there for generations, for that to go away again, I'm helpless. I don't know how far and how much I can talk or say that, hey, your conversation will sort it out, because it won't. This is something that's too deep rooted.
Yeah.
And me as an individual, I don't have a solution to that.
Yeah, I don't think you're supposed to also, because you're already doing what you can, and there's only so much that one individual can do. And I find this trolling to be a bit ironical also, because you're one of the most well-read and well-informed people, not just about uh, your areas of interest, and the environment or the science of it, or education, but
Mm.
also in terms of our the religious texts, for instance, across various faiths. I mean, you're well read, your
Yeah.
Puranas, your mythology, the
Yes.
nuances of it. And if
Right.
anybody had a little bit of awareness of how deeply you understand, and how well informed you are, they would be surprised, because so many people who I know to profess a lot of religious
Mm.
mm, love for the religion, don't know a thing about it, which is
Yeah,
the most ironical thing
of
that you
course.
can see.
Of course, that is so true. Yeah.
Yeah. Just we saw a kind of a strange ceremony happening in the new parliament. And
Yeah.
what, according to you, was the symbolism of that? And as a citizen of India, as somebody from uh, a minority community, even though I know you don't profess any faith except for humanism and for your love of animals and the environment and other human beings, you're still, as you said, going to be labeled as the othered uh, Indian citizen. How did you see
Hmm.
that spectacle?
Well, I mean, it was just that, isn't it? It was just it was just a show. I mean, the kind of environments that I grew up in, we also had our Sarva Dharma, Pratna, and all religions are one and all that. But it didn't mean anything, because you still actually circled back to a very narrow nationalistic way of living. So these things are just tokenism. These things don't mean anything, and ultimately it's just for that moment for people to feel good about themselves, and then that's it. There's really nothing more. It's like it's as stupid as this dressing up and making a dreadful candy figure out of this Mohenjo-daro dancing girl.
Hmm.
um it's just, these are I don't want to use casual foul language that comes seems to come so automatically, but these are just half-hearted attempts at showing that they're very secular, but it doesn't mean anything. It
Hmm.
doesn't mean anything.
No, I don't think there's any pretense of being secular at all. I mean, it's just,
No, no, not at all.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
just they're trying to show you that they are the ones who are memorializing the culture that has been forgotten, which is not true, which is all, it's always been there. But that's another conversation for another time. I just want to ask you one last question before I let you go. What do you see in the future for this country? As an educator, as somebody who loves environment, as somebody who loves animals, and who invests in human relationships.
Well, I think I do have a case of looking through the glasses. I do hope things change, even if they are tiny, incremental change. I don't have that much of optimism. Maybe I feel safer wrapped around pessimism. But I think that this phase that the country is going through will not last. It
Hmm.
won't last. It's not that the next phase will be the golden age and we're all living happily. It will have its challenges and difficulties. But I think that there will come a point where people realize that hate is getting them nowhere. and segregation and separation and this kind of very close-minded nationalism is getting them nowhere, and hopefully they'll move on. I mean, for example, I've got people who are my friends. I can't say anything other than they're my friends, but they are very orthodox and phobic in their views, but their children are not, and their children are now in their 30s, right? So that gives me hope. So I'm like, your daughter and son don't think like you. I'm so delighted. That means there is a change taking place, and maybe the older generation and our generation and all that, we will go with our attitudes, and they won't rub off too much on our children. I hope.
Yeah, I just have so much admiration for you because I've
Thank
seen
you.
how much you have taken on, as an individual, as an educator, as a person. And you do things tirelessly because you believe in, you have a certain kind of an idea of the world that you want to live in, and you're not just sitting and pontificating about it. This is probably the first
Yeah.
time you're answering these questions in such great detail. But I just want you to know that everything that you do is being remembered and appreciated. And
Thank you.
I wish there were more people like you in JP. I wish they were, because this country, this world would have been so much better for your presence. Thank you so much for giving me your time.
Thank you. Don't
And
forget yourself. The world is a better place because you exist.
uh, this is not my interview, Yasmin.
I'm just putting it out there.
No, no. And I'll see you soon, hopefully, in person,
Yes.
and we'll chat
Yeah.
some more. And you just take
School
care of
holidays in
yourself.
2 weeks. So yeah.
Yes, you take care of you, and I'll connect with you soon. Take care.
Okay. Take
Bye.
care. Yeah.
Bye.
Bye bye. Bye.
Hi, this is Reema, and if you liked what you just saw, then do like and subscribe, because remember, this is a safe space for people to talk, share their stories, to hear each other, make some time in their busy lives for unboxed conversations.